Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Vines. I'm Governing Board Director, Chair of the Sports Pavilion Committee. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you for attending. This is our first committee meeting of the 2022-2023 year. We have, four of our members here in person. We have one remote, so we do have a quorum. And with that, we'll move forward to approving the minutes from our May 11th, 2022 meeting. If there are no changes or objections, we'll go ahead and enter those. Okay. Karen, so noted. Moving on to 3.01, microphone usage. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's a button that says push, and you can pull it closer to you if you'd like. Push that, the green light will come on, and you can speak into it. You can just pull it, push it away. Make sure you push the button, and that green light goes out when you're done talking, so that whatever you may say when you don't want everybody to hear. Sometimes that tends to happen, but you know. And when you would like to speak, just make sure the committee chair recognizes you, and then you can go forward. And I'd like to go ahead and go through onto 3.02, committee introductions. If you wouldn't mind, Joe, would you please start? Just go ahead and give us your name and maybe a little bit of a background.
I'm Joe Hoyer. I'm third year on the Pavilion. 5 years. Oh, yeah, that would help. Right if we went through it, then I didn't do it. Third year on the committee. Thank you. 5-year resident as of June, and that's about it.
Thank you, Joe. Jeff?
I am Jeff Nelson, and I've been here in Arizona for 6 years. I just inherited my parents' home, and so I've been there for 2 years. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Jeff. Cheryl?
My name is Cheryl Tyler. We have had a home here in Sun City West for 17 years, and we moved in permanently July 4th, 7 years ago. And it's nice to be here.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Barry?
Barry Hardesty, the manager of the Sports Pavilion, and I'm in my 12th year. They haven't get rid of me yet.
Thank you, Barry. And for those of you who don't know, Barry is our staff advisor, so he sits on the committee as our staff advisor. And Janet, are you there?
Hi, my name is Janet Smith. I have been in Sun City West coming up on 6 years.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, going forward to 3.03. You all should have received your roster for the standing committees. This is for all the standing committees. It is confidential. It is not for public dissemination. So because it does have all the standing committees, people that sit on those committees with their emails and their phone numbers. So it's just not to be used for public. Any questions? Super. Okay. And the next item, 3.04, for BoardDocs, we're going to skip that and we'll move it to the October meeting since we are short a couple of people, and I think will be better for them to be here and gain that information in person. So we'll move that on to October, which will bring us to 4.01 for Barry and his report.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. First, let me preface this, that August 22, we were closed for 2 weeks versus August 2021, we were open. So some of the numbers are going to look or seem bad, but they're really not. It was due to the closure. So for league bowling, we were down $3,000. Open bowling, we were down $6,000. Miscellaneous revenue, we were down $414. Total bowling revenue, we were down $9,529. Food and beverage, we were up $4,646, mainly due to the pub was up versus last year. And grand total bowling revenue was down $4,883. And our total lines bowled, we were down 4,801. But like I say, we're comparing a month of half, 2 weeks versus 4 weeks, so. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
So year to year, would you say that we would have been on budget if we had the other 2 weeks?
Yes, definitely.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Okay. Barry, do you have anything?
Capital.
You can go ahead.
Recently, I submitted a capital request for the bowling center. Due to the delamination of the lanes and them coming apart, we're in the need of new bowling lanes. So I put in for new lanes for next year, the next budget, which is $275,000. New ball returns, they're original ball returns, so they're 40-some years old, at $108,000. A new countertop in the restaurant that's never been replaced, so that's $10,000. New cabinets in the restaurant, it's another $10,000, and a sound system for the pub at $21,000. So that's my capital request list. Any questions on that? Yes.
I have a couple of questions, Barry.
Okay.
Okay. So recently there was an issue with the countertop in the bar. Did that get repaired or replaced?
That's getting replaced next month. It's
Okay.
already been approved and in the process of getting made.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is, I know you have given us this information, but I can't remember, so I'm just going to ask you to refresh my memory. When does the contract expire for memos?
They have another year yet,
Another year, and that expires when?
in September, I think.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Go ahead, Joe.
Barry, the lane replacement, where is that relative to the normal replacement cycle that you would have been on?
It's relatively early. For some reason, the lanes are coming apart. We can't figure out why. So what we're going to do is once we take the old lane off, we're going to analyze the underneath ground to see if there's maybe been a shift in the foundation or something that's causing the lanes to come apart. The other issue is the fact that we're such a high volume center also that we oil twice a day, and that could also be part of the problem. But that'll all be looked into once we get everything apart. We can't see anything without taking them off.
And the number that you're projecting is based on, as best you can get current estimates?
Yeah, I had Brunswick come in. They did a total analysis of the situation, and that's their bid to replace it. Okay. It costs $100,000 to repair them, and that repair would only last 2 or 3 years, so it doesn't make sense. So,
anything like interesting from the technology standpoint that?
nothing. They've never experienced it before.
Thanks.
We're rare.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? No? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Is there an estimated, the work to be done? How long?
2.5 to 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and take questions from the audience. I know Shelley's waiting.
Shelley Giles, 182-120, I think, something like that. Anyway, are you guys aware that Angela's lost their lease over in Grand? In a year and a half, their lease will be up. They will be out of there because they're bringing in a new beverage company to run Grand Cafe and Angela's. They're gonna tear it apart and make it bigger and a better restaurant there. I'm wondering, since we're in the middle and we have Mimo's out a year, can't we design something now to make that restaurant bigger and more appealing to more people instead of just putting Band-Aids on a countertop and cabinets? Just a thought.
Well, the biggest downside of that is space. There's just no space back there to enlarge that restaurant.
What if we run it out to the sidewalk, though?
Run it out to the sidewalk,
Yeah.
that would be very, very costly. Because of our underground, we have for the oil and everything is out there. So would have to be removed. The soil all would have to be removed due to contamination. That'd be real costly.
And what
Not out
about,
of the question, but it'd be costly.
what about the gas? Didn't we recently put gas?
Gas
in?
is on the side,
Oh,
so
on the side.
every restaurant would want gas, so that would be
Right.
a plus.
Right.
Okay, I was just thinking,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Thank you, Shelley. Any other questions? No, okay, super. Anything else, Barry?
That's all I have.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it. Excellent, thanks for the excellent report. With that, we'll move on to 4.03 with Pete Finelli, our CFO. There you are.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we actually move on to mine, could you go back to Barry's first slide? I thought I'd make a few highlights. Back to his comparisons. Yeah, thank you. And Joe, I think you referenced against the budget. That's very astute, but this is actually against prior year. The good news is that we anticipated this closure within our budget, so we will not be short to that. Item number 2 is certainly we have some expense reductions during the closure for especially the part-timers that are, not on guaranteed hours and stuff like that. So it's always a few offsets on that side too. The second tab, I also wanted to briefly highlight, if you'll go to the second capital related that he mentioned. Probably very few of you might have been at BNF, but we started to explain a little bit about our reserve study. One of you asked, I think Joe, was what was the ordained date for the replacement of those, and it's resided in the reserve study. But what we brought up at the meeting was inflation is certainly taking root in a lot of our capital realm. And we had it, I believe, don't hold me to this, Barry, but I thought we had it like 26 or 27 for the bowling overlay. So it was already getting to be what we call pretty well funded in our reserve study. But the price in there was probably in the upper $190,000, $200,000 range. So inflation, supply chain are really taking root in some of these capital spends. Almost identical happened on the ball returns. I think we had like 70,000, but as he said, those were probably the original installation. And when you get prompted for these these actual replacements, then you move to actually get the most current pricing, and it can have that effect. And so I just want to say these. Also, I think one of you mentioned that the audience member, these are just requests. We got a long way to go before these are even conditioned for acceptance into it, and the effect on expanding a restaurant or the price for that would most likely be a very, you'd have to almost involve, and if you saw our capital timetable, a lot of those won't probably be considered until the following year, given where we're at in the cycle. So good, they're all up for discussion, but most likely it's going to be out of ways. So the financials is excellent news. And before I go there, just to remind everybody that we have a June 30th year end. We go into audit for almost 2 months from July and August. At that time, we present to the BNF their audit report, but until we do that, we don't even reset our general ledger balances until that's finalized. So we won't be seeing any financials for the current year well into probably even as early as November. So just to know that, but I'll let you know if anything that we're seeing on our preliminary close is noteworthy, but we're not that far away. So to the prior year, it was a very good year. This is published. These next three are all published, and they're very busy. And so what we do is extrapolate that out and put it in a presentation format. But for anybody that wants any detail, they can look at the attached agenda. And of course, these are also filed. But the presentation is our summary of it, of the year to date. In the first slide, also, as I mentioned, things are a little busy. So if we start, the bowling revenues were about $730,000, but that gets a little busy on there when we're starting to do huge numbers like that and the variances. So we truncate everything down into these decimals. So overall operating revenue was just a little over $900,000 against a $570,000 budget. Part of that was just the growth and the restoration, and all the kudos to the people that play, and for the COVID impact being mostly behind us. So $350,000 favorable variance on revenues, mostly coming from bowling, and next slide sheds a little light on where that revenue is coming from. Mostly the league play, which is to be expected, and these other revenue streams that we defined in our general ledgers. Moving on to the another revenue with year over year, kind of a hidden behind the scenes revenue stream is, beer and wine sales. Most of this, of course, you could attribute to Lizard Acres, but there's a portion of it as well that comes off of the bowling play out in the lanes area. Moving to the expenses, quite bluntly, we were right on target for everything. So $840,000 budgeted, $820,000 budgeted, 840 actual. So within 20 grand, despite all the higher increase in play and revenues. So if you go to the next slide, that is where I summarize it. And this is really good news. It's been a long time since I believe that I've seen in my review of the Pavilion's P&Ls that they've had that big a positive operating margin. So kudos to you guys playing, and the open people are out enjoying it, and we kept our expenses under control. So really good. And for those that are the accountants in the room, this wasn't a profit. This all goes into the broader stream of our overall association P&L. And of course, there's always, this is before any kind of capital related like depreciation and things like that. So just a couple of statistical notables. The lineage that was up almost 126,000. That's excellent. We did see a slight drip with that, but that's somewhat to be expected because when you have the league play, it's, I think, the lowest price that we charge for a line played. So that's somewhat to be expected when you get that influence in there. And then I do this slide for other committees, but there were really no notable expense variances. So that was more for that than anything. So that's the extent of my report.
This is great, Pete. Thank you. This is much more detailed than even last year, and I thought those reports were great. So kudos to you. Thank you. And I will say, and to Barry and staff, great job, because the bowling alley is definitely doing well. That's wonderful. So any questions from the committee for Pete? Any questions from the audience for Mr. Finale? Can you go to the microphone, please, and write your name and rec card number, please?
Jim McLeod, 133201. I just, for clarification, I didn't understand at the beginning we're 3 months into the new fiscal year, and I understand it's being audited, but there's no expenses that could have been reported. I know we don't have the budget and all that done, but the expenses month to month should be pretty easy to report.
Yeah, it's been our statement we made in the past that until our books are finalized, we go into this dormant period. I guess my comment in the past has been, is if we're going to be very, very transparent and say these are unaudited, I'd be glad to do that. We actually have not executed a close on July or August, so I would not have come to you today and
Well,
said
not-
we
not
have that.
October,
But
just
if,
a month.
for October's meeting, I can, as long as we're very clear that they're draft and unapproved by the Budget and Finance Committee, and I'll be glad to do that.
I mean, it's not up to me, it's up to them.
Sure.
But I just like to see what we're spending instead of waiting 3 months.
I will do that.
Thank you. We have another question coming.
Good afternoon. Tom McNally, 915-482. I have to write it down because at my advanced age. I just
okay.
have a couple of questions. First and foremost, when we're looking at numbers, is the budget what your plan is that you're going off of, or is last year what you're going off of? Because two different things in a business. So, I mean, the numbers Barry gave, go Steelers, the numbers Barry gave showed versus budget. The numbers that you see in the monthly Sun City West magazine, which yes, only goes through June, okay, show a different story. So, and the other question is, when the budget was made for Barry's activity center, so to speak, was it knowing that they were going to be closing down for 2 or 2.5 weeks?
On the second one, I think I answered that earlier, that we did budget that way. If you go to the second tab from the right, sorry, number 6. So you're correct, as Tom, is that what you're saying? And that's why we don't have, can you expand that? Up at the bottom where the hand is, at the top bar, hit that plus sign and give it like 3 hits, yeah. So answer to your question against prior year, you're correct. We highlighted in our presentation the 924,000 revenue against 568 against the prior year, a very positive performance as well, 415,000 more.
So are we looking at, in comparisons, are we looking at goal, budget?
Both.
Or last year?
Both.
Because as often happens in any kind of business, you're going to beat or you're going to lose, whatever the situation is, to last year. But if you've planned properly,
Correct.
you're going to end up beating your plan as opposed to because of unforeseen circumstances.
Very
what
true.
have you.
In accounting realm, we do that both, with a
on
capital B. If we knew everything and the budget was a perfect science, that would be the gold standard, and we'd say, we knew everything was going to happen, how do we perform? Well, we don't. There's thousands of impacts that across this big of an association. So yes, actually and probably I should have brought that up in my presentation, the gold standard usually is how do you compare against the prior year in terms of performance. The budget presentation, though, tends to be how are we actually projecting our, the performance, and I can give you the change as I was starting to do there against prior year, but for long-term planning, we had to say, how did we do against that budget performance? Because that's how we had earmarked capital, that's how we had earmarked cash flow and things like that. So,
Okay.
but
Because,
but
again, through June, the numbers were, Barry's bowling revenue was 40,000, give or take, was $40,000 in the plus. Okay.
Right
Golf
there.
dues, et cetera, same thing. Now, there are some things that are weighing that down. Because every month I open it up, because I know a profit and loss statement like the back of my hand. But it's interesting to go through and look and read and see. And I was just curious as far as the scenario and what and when. And again, that's what's published in September was only through June. So things change quickly, and the couple of weeks that the bowling alley / activity center was closed make a big difference. So
I can, and there's a lot of points there, but to finish the thought, by the way, 415,000 more in revenue, our expenses only changed by 20 grand. Again, a great testimony to how Barry runs his shop over there, and quite bluntly, it was even down, if you can believe that, 863,000 of expenses, and it came down from prior years. So extremely positive performance in this realm. Again, we anticipated in the budget, and I'm not to keep repeating it, but we don't publish. I'll bring drafts, but we don't start publishing. We're doing all the behind the scenes posting of general ledger activity and revenue from Great Plains and all that, but we're not analyzing it for dissemination until we've reset all the final ones, and as long as everybody understands that.
okay.
Most
Thank you for
likely
your
it will
time.
not change, sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
If there are no other questions. And Tim Hurley, our governing board president, is sitting in the audience, and he just explained, as I think I'll go ahead and point out as well, that one of the things that's important to know is June 30th is the end of our fiscal year. So that's one of the reasons, and Pete, is inundated with, the audit that's been going on. So, and if you can get the numbers for October, great. If not, we're not going to shoot you. But the June 30th report is great. It shows both that year-to-date operating revenue totals compared to the year-to-date budget, and then also the actuals. So both variances are there, and I appreciate it. So thanks so much, Pete. And with that, we'll move on to 5.01, which is Lizard Acres. So I'm going to open this up with Barry and I guess. Anything new going on with Lizard Acres? Barry, I know that we've moved the music from Wednesday night to Friday night, and I missed last Friday night, so I'm
Shame on
sorry.
you.
I know, shame on me. But how did it go?
Very well. The response was great.
Super.
We were packed again, so it seems like we're going to continue being very crowded on the music nights. So we have a wide variety of bands booked through the next couple of months. So we're booked out already into November. So it's going really well.
And you're reading my mind, because that was my next question.
See
How
that?
far out are we booked? So
We are. Some of the is amazing, the local talent, how good they are.
in this community,
Yes.
right? Because I think you're staying pretty much within the community, aren't you?
Pretty much. We have one group called Wild and Mild, fabulous group.
Yeah.
They're from outside the area, but they draw a ton of people.
I did get to see them. I was there for that.
They're very good.
Yeah, they were very good. So, and it was very crowded that night.
It was very crowded.
We had to get there. I think we got there about 45 minutes early to get a seat. So the I will share, in lieu of being there Friday night, and Barry and I just talked about this briefly, I opted for a stay at Banner instead, which was quite interesting. And I shared with Barry, it was interesting because being in the emergency room, I heard some interesting things that were going on, and I shared this with Tim, things that Barry and I had talked about behind the scenes, and the people next to me were discussing Lizard Acres. The two gentlemen next to me, behind the curtains, if you will, were discussing Lizard Acres and the changes that are coming to Lizard Acres and what's going to happen. And not sure how it's going to be received, but we'll see how it goes. And they were very in-depth, and so I guess things are being discussed out in the community about changes. And so Barry and I, we did have conversation because, as Barry attested, that their attendance is very large with the music nights and with the tables and the dancing and everything. He's had to stop the dart players on those nights, and it's definitely that was not very well received. So there was conversation was had about perhaps moving maybe darts and Wii bowling to another location, just so nobody would be affected by the music, because that music's going to be there. And Barry, is it just the live music that you moved, or it was
Just the live music. yes.
karaoke and trivia
Karaoke
is
stayed
going
the
to
same.
stay on?
And trivia stays the
Trivia
same.
stays the same. So I think that's, we're in this dilemma here, and we're going to have to continue moving forward with some sort of a discussion, and I think that will start taking place. But it did have people all aflutter out there. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but I wanted to let everybody know that's what I heard Friday night.
In the hospital.
In the hospital, and I will tell you, it was from somebody who works at Sun City West. Well, I guess, Barry, does he work for
No.
Sun City West, or he
No.
just
He's in
a contract employee?
contractor.
He's a contract employee. So, Mr. Schwinn, if you want to see me after, I'll let you know who it was. No, I'm pretty much done with that. So if the committee has any questions for Barry regarding Lizard Acres, Barry and I, where we stand with, I try to get in there at least once a week. I don't know how, Barry and I sit down and chat and try to hammer things out and what we can do, and I know he's working, but if the committee doesn't have any more questions for him, we'll go ahead and take questions from the audience.
Jim McLeod again. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Lizard Acres. Go there no more than 7 nights a week. The only two concerns is, one, often on Wednesday or Thursday run out of draft beer. Often, almost every week. I don't know what can be done, but you could probably sell more if you had more. And second is, on those busy nights, are we staying within capacity of the room? Because it seems like we might be over capacity and it could be a problem. That's my only two concerns. But thank you, it's doing a good job.
The draft beer is due to the fact we own a refrigeration. We've ordered a walk-in cooler back in March, and we're still waiting for it. That'll alleviate that problem, because I could only hold like 6 kegs
Right.
for a week, and it's just not enough. You're right, we do sell a lot of beer.
No ETA on the walk-in?
So we're waiting for it any day. It should be here any day now. And so then we'll be able to order twice the amount of draft beer and have all the other beer cold at all times.
Okay.
So that'll alleviate that problem. As far as capacity goes, we're always within capacity. The capacity for that room is like 240 5 people. So we've never even really come close to that number, so. We do take a head count, which is sometimes difficult when you get that many people, but we've never counted more than the capacity.
Okay. On music nights, probably pushing it.
We're pushing it, we definitely are.
And what was the capacity again? I'm sorry.
I think it's 245,
245. Thank you.
okay.
I will say, when I've been there, on the music nights I've been there, we've been, 175 to
Yeah,
185, 187, so I don't know if you've seen anything higher than that in your
yeah,
counts.
not too much.
But, okay.
And we never run out of Coors Light.
Well, you have it every time I'm there. He's there 7 days a week, I'm there 5. So, what a cash cow gold mine. The Lizard Acres. Space,
Yeah.
little tight. Now,
Yeah.
you said you went to, or you missed last Friday's?
I did.
Because you had a prior appointment with the hospital?
I did.
Packed. Every single time when it was on Wednesdays, packed.
Right.
Just a single thought, and Barry, I address you on this. If now going to Fridays is conflicting with the every other week Boomer dance. So I don't know about who's gonna win, so to speak, that tug of war. But I mean, it is always packed. We were there last Friday for the dance. We're there every other Tuesday for trivia. We're there at least 2 other times a week, and it's always, now, by always, I mean at normal time, not at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday afternoon kind of thing, or morning, but a gold mine. And from the unknowledgeable eyes, it's packed, and it's almost, you can't find seats. And by the way, what you guys have done with the tables and everything and pushing the couches, outstanding idea. If the more people that can sit, the better. But it also was a problem Wednesday night or Friday night, whenever the concert was, Friday night. There were people looking, and the problem is it starts at 5 and people come in at 4:30 thinking they're going to get a seat. It's like, good luck. If you're not there by 4 o'clock, forget it. You're going to stand, or you're going to have to go out, into the foyer and grab a seat or a chair. Then you irritate the bowlers, etc. But that is, what an idea. And I mean, almost after 3 o'clock any day, you can go in there and there's 10, 15 people at any one time. And then for all of the other functions and activities that go on in there, there's, I mean, it is a great meeting place. It's a great fun location.
Yeah.
Selfishly wish it was larger, but that hopefully can develop as the place continues to fly. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can only totally concur with what he said. Everything, I mean, is just, on the nights I have been there for the music, that is absolutely what's happening, and people are dragging chairs in from out, and I'm sure the bowlers are not happy, but absolutely setting up those 6-foot tables and chairs, that was really solved a big problem. So I think that's probably it. Joe, did you have anything for Lizard Acres that you could think of? No. Okay. Cheryl, anything you want to say? Okay. Well, then we will move on. Okay. So to 5.02, to the review of the RCSCW committee roles. So we have 5 standing committees, and that's this CDOT 5.03. You should have this one, Jeff. It should be at the front of that first page, right? Okay. So it just outlines the responsibilities for the standing committees, and we're only concerned at this moment with the Sports Pavilion and Bowling Committee. If you get a chance, you can read the rest of the committee responsibilities if you have an opportunity. But for our committee, it's our responsibility is to work with Barry and be the liaison to the governing board, and basically help Barry with what he needs. That is, we are his voice to the governing board, and help him accomplish things, his goals. I know he's put in his request for the next year's budget, and we'll work hard to continue to push that. If there was anything additional that we had. And part of the committee's responsibility is we make recommendations and we come to a consensus to move things forward to the governing board. The committee does not vote, and as a committee, when you come to a consensus, things are moved forward unanimously. Earlier at the B&F committee, the question was raised, what if you didn't come to a unanimous consensus? At that point, I would just say go to the governing board and say that we, by a 4-2 vote, or whatever the vote was, this was the vote, and to move it forward.
You have to have a majority of your committee.
The majority, correct, by 4-2, or, right. Thank you, Karen. And for those of you that don't know, I'm glad she interjected, because I was wondering how and when I was going to introduce Karen Ripken. So thank you, Karen, because she didn't want me to introduce her. So that is Karen Ripken. She is the governing board's executive assistant, and that will bring us into the other item on this same line item is the committee member handbook that hopefully everybody has read the committee member handbook online. If you would like a hard copy of it, if you did not print it out yourself, you are more than welcome to let Karen know. She will print it for you. And you can either pick it up from her or she can bring it to the next meeting. But just let her know. Are there any questions?
Can I just clarify, on CO3, is your committee reaching consensus that that's going to remain unaltered today, or?
It will remain unaltered unless anybody has any changes. Joe? No. Correct, Karen. Thank you. So 5.03 is the policies. The Sports Pavilion has 4 policies, and it is the committee's responsibility each year to review these policies and decide whether or not these policies need to be updated, make whatever changes. We will redline them, and then we will submit it. Once the committee comes to consensus, we submit them to the governing board for their approval. So what I'd like to do today is assign, I'm just going to give one, since we only have 4, this committee only has 4, I'm going to give one to each of the committee members, and over the next 4 months, we'll just review one at the next meetings, and you'll bring your red line changes to the meeting for discussion. Now, that was the big discussion at the meeting this morning, was to bring the red lines or to just bring your suggested changes. So these, if you'll look, all of these policies are very simple. So what I would like to do is just have you on a separate sheet of paper write what your suggested changes will be to these, and when we're at the meeting, you may read them and discuss them with the rest of the committee, and the rest of the committee will weigh in. Karen will then make any red line changes for us. Does that work, Karen?
Yep.
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Karen, do you want to know, do you want it in the minutes on who's going to get what policy?
If you'd like to, we can do
Or-
it that
or
way.
not.
That'd be fine.
Or if not, I'll just hand it to him after the meeting.
However you want to
Okay,
do
I'll
it.
do it after the meeting.
I just might want to stress that these bowling policies, as are all policies of the committees of the board, are reviewed annually. And chances are you may not have any changes to them. So don't feel compelled to be searching for changes. You may find that they're fine as is, so that's perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Karen. And you might find just some grammar changes. That's perfectly fine. So if there are no questions, we'll move on. With that, any audience, or I'm sorry, any committee comments before we go to the audience? Joe, you have been awfully quiet today. Kind of scares me. Kind of frightens me a little bit. I'm worried I'm going to get a long email at home later. But, okay, if not, any audience comments? If there is nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.